I'm president of the Fort Road Federation. So on behalf of the Federation, I'd like to welcome everybody from the neighborhood who's attending tonight, as well as the city and county and other organizations, and thank you for attending. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to learn about plans for the proposed day space at the Freedom House building. Give us an opportunity to ask the city and others questions and get understanding of the project. And then finally, to provide the city feedback that can help improve the project for everyone. And so before I introduce the panel and the speakers and take care of some housekeeping items, I want to note that a few years ago, the Federation was working on a strategic plan, and we did some outreach into the neighborhood to get what people wanted to see in that. And one of the questions we asked people at the community center, at Cooper's, at block parties, at coffee shops and gathering spaces, back when you could do that, was what makes West 7th a great neighborhood? And I was expecting people to talk about our businesses, their favorite restaurant, parks, schools, but the number one answer we got, and it just again and again and again, was my neighbors. And it's my neighbors that make this a great neighborhood. And so that's why people love to live in West 7th. And so with that spirit in mind, I'm really hoping that tonight's meeting can shape this project so that it works for all of our neighbors, including, hold on, please. We got some ground rules coming. Just please hold on. We're getting there. We're hoping it works for all of our neighbors. So a few housekeeping things. First, please keep yourself muted until you're called on. There'll be an opportunity for people to talk and share their ideas and share their concerns. We realize there are many. This will help everybody get to hear and participate. This meeting is being recorded for documentation and for language translation, so keep that in mind. After introductions, the city will give a 30-minute overview of the project, and then there will be time for first we'll do a round of questions of clarity. So if there's things people didn't understand about the presentation or want more information about, first we'll do that. Second of all, then we'll come back and we'll have a time for everyone to ask questions and get information about, get their questions answered from the city and the county. So for how we're gonna do that is I'm asking you to write your question in the chat and I will call on you and then you can unmute yourself and answer your question. Can we skip to the slide B? There are some ground rules tonight that will make this a productive and helpful meeting for everybody. I realize there's a lot of different opinions and a lot of different feelings, which is why we're talking about this tonight. So we're asking you to be open-minded, to listen respectfully when others are speaking. Speak from your own experience instead of generalizing. Respectfully ask challenging questions. We need to ask the city challenging questions, but we need also to refrain from personal attacks. Be engaged and provide feedback. We want to use this opportunity to really give the city honest feedback from the neighborhood so we can make this, like I said, working for everybody. The goal is not always to agree. We're not gonna agree, but we really wanna learn and have deeper understanding. If you have your camera on, which is great if you have the internet connection that can support that, please be aware of your facial expressions. And I'd like to think of this as step up and step back. We ask that give people space to have to express themselves and understand when you need to step back and when you need to listen. And for those of you who might be feeling shy, I hope this is a respectful discussion and that you can take part. So that's how things are going to work tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Councilperson Maker for a few words, and then we'll introduce our speaker.
Great. Thank you so much, Dana, and the West 7th Fort Road Federation for hosting tonight. It is not easy to facilitate a meeting, period, and it is certainly not easy to do it over Microsoft Teams, even though we've all been getting gradually better at it. So thank you so much for doing this tonight and for your leadership. I also want to thank everyone else for taking time to be part of this conversation tonight. I know everyone is busy It is a stressful time. It is a hard time. And the fact that you're making the time to be here
Teddy, what are you
tonight
doing?
really, really matters. We're here tonight because we really have a humanitarian crisis on our hands. And I think we tend to think about humanitarian crises as being something that we see on the news or we read about happening in different places, but all of us have been seeing throughout the last 8 months in our neighborhood, in downtown, throughout the city, throughout the state, that we have far too many residents in St. Paul who do not have a home, who have a sidewalk as a home. And those of us tonight who are lucky enough to be inside warm homes, it is snowing, hailing, pelleting, whatever it is doing outside right now. I know I've been feeling extremely fortunate tonight to have a home. I know many of us feel that way, but too many of our neighbors do not. I am very proud of the work, and you're going to get to hear from them tonight, but we have incredible staff at the city and at the county who have been working hard for the last 9 months, ever since we realized that the pandemic was creating an unprecedented crisis in unsheltered homelessness, to try to find additional shelter and additional day space and additional permanent housing to help our residents. And as a result of their efforts, we've identified a number of locations across the city, one of which is at Freedom House in our own Ward 2. And I'm glad that one of the locations is here in our own ward, because I believe, and I know many of us have talked about this, many of you on this call have talked with me about your concerns about this, that we're concerned about our neighbors and we want to be able to have them be in a home where they can also access services, where they can access transit, where they can be centrally located. And our ward is uniquely situated to provide that kind of access. And we also are uniquely situated because I believe we have an incredibly generous community and neighborhood. As Dana was saying, you yourselves in the West 7th community, I know this from working together with you on so many things. It is about neighbors and it's about the people in the community. And historically, you have always extended that to mean people living in physical homes in the neighborhood and people who are living in the neighborhood who may not have a home. In fact, my predecessor, Dave Thune, reminded me that he was the one who advocated for Dorothy Day Higher Ground to be built in downtown in the location that it's in our ward, because that was the best when other neighborhoods were not as interested in having higher ground be in their neighborhood. So I am so proud of us in this ward, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight. This is a big change, and that's why, as Dana said, we're having this conversation. We want to be open with you about the criteria that we've been considering. We want to be open with you and hear your questions and hear your input and ideas on how we can make this work well for everyone. I also want to commit to you tonight that this is not just a one and done conversation. We need to stay connected and stay in touch, and I'm committing to you tonight to continue having ongoing check-ins about how this is going as we move forward. Because again, we are going to hear your thoughts tonight, incorporate as many of them as we can, and then we intend, and I pledge to you, to continue to stay in touch, and I'm not going away. So thank you for taking time again tonight, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. So our presenters tonight, we have Deputy Mayor Jamie Tincher, the Director of the Department of Safety and Inspections, Ricardo Cervantes, and then Cheryl Peterson, the Executive Director of Listening House. We also have experts in the House who include Max Woldhusen from Ramsey County Office of Housing Stability, Bill Dermody from the City Planning and Economic Development Department, and St. Paul Police Department Senior Commander Jeremy Ellison. So we'll have about a half an hour presentation, and then we'll follow that up, like I said, with some questions of clarity, and then a discussion, a moderated discussion, giving feedback to the city. So I will mute myself and listen to this presentation.
Thank you, Dana, for hosting, and thank you, Councilmember Naker, for your advocacy and leadership in this space. It's really appreciated and important. I just want to speak really briefly to give some context to what has happened this year and how the city has been trying to meet the need that we're seeing. This first slide is our current encampment sites across the city. A couple years ago, the city changed our process of how we were responding to folks that were experiencing homelessness in our city. What we started working on was making sure that when we knew that there was a tent, an individual that was unsheltered in the city, we would do a wellness check. We would track that information and try to connect those individuals to outreach staff and services. Our goals were to not just move individuals around our city, but to move individuals indoors and get them on a path to success. What happened in February was COVID hit, and we experienced a lot of challenges to the system and how we were trying to manage and meet the needs for very vulnerable people in our community. COVID hit in February, and what we saw, as you can see in this chart, is the numbers of encampment locations, tents in our city, and residents that were sheltering outdoors just grew exponentially. If you were looking at this chart in 2019, the graph would basically be about a straight line at the bottom. In all of 2019, we had less than 30 individuals in any given week that were sheltering outdoors in the city of St. Paul. And by that, we mean individuals who are sheltering in a tent, under a bridge, in a cave in our city. And what happened in February was COVID hit, and we month over month saw 100 more individuals who had no other option than to shelter outdoors. We right now have 304 individuals who are sheltering outdoors. We have 90 active sites across the city, 268 tents. In downtown, so my last slide, if we zoom into downtown, we have 84 people that are sheltering outdoors just in our downtown area. I think that what happened with COVID is many of our shelter spaces that were caring for individuals, they had to meet the COVID precautions and protocols, which meant that they had to reduce the number of individuals that they could serve in any space. So the capacity that we had shrunk due to our response that was required from a public health perspective to the COVID virus. What also happened was that a lot of individuals who were couch hopping or finding some other temporary places to stay, a lot of those options, because people were taking precautions in their own homes, a lot of those options were no longer available for people. So I think that what happened with COVID is it really exposed just what the crisis and how many people were living on the margins in the city. One of the other things, and specific to Freedom House, and what we want to really talk about tonight and answer questions on, is that in addition to shelter space that was impacted, COVID impacted all of the spaces that provided the day services and the respite for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So a lot of people who were experiencing homelessness, they would spend the day in the libraries or our rec centers, public facilities, and those places became inaccessible because they were closed, and other impacts. So Freedom House really is our best plan so that we can continue to provide some of those really critical needed services. And I know that Cheryl with Listening House is going to talk through a lot of those operations. And so grateful to be here. I'll stay on for the whole call, and I'm happy to take any questions later. But thank you all for engaging and being a part of this conversation with us. I'll turn it over to Ricardo, our Director of the Department of Safety and Inspections.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So as the numbers of the unsheltered homeless increased, it's clear to us that we need to come up with more capacity. In line with our coordinated response, we were given a mission, obviously, by our leaders, both at the city and at the county, to meet these needs. And we needed to do that, obviously, before the dead cold of winter. And we were also working with deadlines related to our funding stream. We have an urgent need, obviously, to create more shelter overnight space for individuals that are out on the streets, and also create more space for daytime service. As the deputy mayor has indicated, some of the areas where folks were able to find warm shelter during the day have diminished. There's been diminished services with some of our shelters as a result of COVID. So higher ground, listening house, initially throughout the COVID experience, were diminishing their numbers to be in alignment with the CDC. We went through a arduous process in regards to looking at opportunities throughout our city. We work exhaustively with Ramsey County. We, in conjunction with them, work with a broker to identify as many opportunities within the city as possible, working with a list of criteria to meet of both the Ramsey County and the city of St. Paul. We identified nearly 80 different opportunities throughout the city. Freedom House surfaced as an ideal location because of its size, its proximity to the other services being offered. Many of the individuals in our encampments downtown and near downtown use services for medical intake, other assessment services, as well as just the regular health services. Freedom House is a former fire station. It has area in its configuration where it allowed for firefighters to rest in the back of the building. That area still exists. It would allow for individuals who may be working overnight, who just need a warm, safe place where they can rest during the day. It offers a reception space, and it's well configured to allow for an access control so that as individuals come in, they can get checked in, be provided instructions, and given the services that they need. It also has safety systems in place, which diminishes the need for us to invest on the front end in any of the construction or rehab of the building. So it works from a financial perspective, as well as serving the needs of the individuals that'll be coming into Freedom House. It also allows for them to be well connected in a one-on-one private environment, which will allow for them to be assessed, whether those are health, could be substance abuse and or treatment, as well as other services that will be provided by Freedom House in the future. And so for those details, I'll turn it over to Cheryl Peterson, who will provide some of the details in regards to the services that'll be provided at this location.
Great, thank you, Ricardo, and thank you also to the Fort Road Federation and the City of St. Paul for hosting this community meeting tonight. I'm happy to be here. So Listening House has been around for nearly 37 years. We've been serving St. Paul and those experiencing homelessness, deep poverty, and isolation. And we've always been in or around the downtown area. Listening House provides a respite from the cold, the snow, the heat, as well as a break just from life on the streets. It's not easy to live your whole life outside and carry around all your belongings with you. Presently at Listening House, we offer food, water, coffee, private bathrooms, hygiene supplies so that people can clean up in private. One of the great features of Freedom House is that it already includes showers, so people can actually take a full shower instead of what we call a bird bath. But let's face it, a bird bath is better than not being able to clean up at all. We offer seasonably appropriate clothes, so shorts and t-shirts in the summer, jackets, hoodies, long underwear in the winter, socks, shoes. Most of that is donated, but we do purchase quite a bit of it as well, trying to make sure that people have what they need to be out in the elements and be warm. Another nice feature of Freedom House is that there's already the lockers that were there for the firefighters. So we'll be able to allow people to store some of their items right on site. It's also very challenging to carry all your belongings that you have around with you all the time. One of the features of Listening House that will carry into Freedom House is that when people do have a place to come inside where they can get some breathing space, they get their heads around them, people are welcomed, they're called by name, they can start to relax a little bit. It's tough to even think about accessing services when in a way you're not settled. So being able to come inside and get settled readies people to be open to connection to services. And that's whether those services are with our outreach partners of Radius Health or People Inc., who specialize in helping long-term homeless adults access housing, whether it's healthcare for the homeless. We are excited about Freedom House having been a training ground for EMS students, that they will come in and also offer healthcare. And just recently, United Family Medicine also called and has expressed interest in having their residents provide health services. A much needed item, we're excited to have some space that is private and with sinks because for too long, staff has tended to frostbitten hands right at our front desk. And so we're excited to have like a little better space for that. Listening House itself, located up on off Mariah, will remain in operation. We have limited the numbers of people we serve presently because of COVID. And so we recognize that there was going to be a need for another day space. So we're happy to be considered as the provider for these services. In our current location during COVID, we're serving a range of 25 to 61 people per day. Prior to COVID, we could go as high as 120 people on the coldest days of winter, but our average was really about 65 people. And I'm happy to take questions at the end of the presentation here, so thank you. I think Director Cervantes, you were going to come back.
Yep. Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay.
And so, we've worked very closely with our St. Paul Police Department, as well as Ramsey County, in response to much of our work around our unsheltered encampments in the city. There is a great partnership amongst many of the providers when we're providing services to individuals. There's a lot of coordination that has to be put in place. Our St. Paul Police Department will be, has been and will continue to be ready to respond to any issues regarding safety in the community, as well as at Freedom House. We work collaboratively with all the other agencies, and then we also have been very successful in identifying where individuals may be preyed upon. And so understanding that this population, there are many individuals who may be vulnerable, in which case we want to make sure that we're protecting everybody related to the Freedom House. And then we also work collaboratively, as I said, St. Paul Police Department has a coast unit with social workers who are certified, who work to de-escalate and then also provide response to individuals experiencing episodes around mental health. Next slide, please. And then, Freedom House, the day shelter, will open in December. And we know time is of the essence. We're working, against, of course, the snow outside that we're looking at. The staffing needs are, currently being recruited and hired. Listening House projects to be employing about a half a dozen staff. as well as numerous volunteers. The operations will be financed through service agreements between Listening House and Ramsey County using federal and COVID-19 dollars. And the lease and the emergency ordinance will be scheduled for a vote before the City Council on November 18th. And so we'll move to the next slide, and then we want to go ahead and open this up for dialogue for any questions about any aspects of this proposal.
Are you still there, Ricardo?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Was there more that you were I wasn't sure whether you guys are done or whether you had more to present.
I think that was it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We'll start the discussion. I want to remind everybody to stay on mute until you're called on. That'll make this a lot less chaotic. We'll start with questions of clarity. So was there anything that you would like more information on, didn't make sense, that you need them to expand a little bit on to better understand? And so if you have a question, write it in the text, and then I will call on you. And I see that Elise is raising her hand. So why don't you start with the first question, Elise? And any future ones, just type them in the text. Oh, and 1 second. For people on the phone, in a few minutes, I'll stop with the text ones and ask you to unmute yourselves if you have any questions so you have an opportunity to ask them. So go ahead, type questions in the text. And Elise, why don't you start with your question?
Thanks, Dana. My name's Elise Jensen. Oh, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. My name's Elise Jensen. I'm a resident of Irvin Park, and I'm our Historic Irvin Park Association president. And it was a pretty short amount of time that we got notice of this, so I don't know that I can speak for our whole park, but I have to say thank you for these efforts and for what you guys are all doing. This is fantastic. I just wanted to ask one question that was brought up. We had posted this on our neighborhood page. I also am on our district council board. And so on Friday, I posted this meeting on our neighborhood page and sent out a group email to everyone and received nothing but positive feedback. But one of the questions was how many additional indoor beds are being added. People were actually almost upset that they didn't see this site. I mean, obviously this site can't necessarily be used to do more, but people were almost upset that we're not doing even more, so which is good, right? But one of the main questions was, are we adding additional beds citywide, and what does that look like outside of just our neighborhood in this facility?
Thank you, Elise. I'll jump in. We are adding, in partnership with Ramsey County, we're adding additional 24/7 wraparound services, shelter spaces. We also know that part of meeting the need is that we need more options for individuals that meet them where they're at and that can most help them move on a path to success. And so we're looking at, for the long term, we need a lot more individual rooms. We need a lot smaller settings for many of the individuals that we're trying to serve. We need to add mental health, chemical dependency treatment services, Bethesda, which I'm sure many people have heard about. We're hoping to move that facility on the same quick timeline that this is. So we're not stopping here. We also know that between today and when those additional facilities are going to be operational, we have some emergency shelter needs that our current capacity is going to meet its limit. And we're also working really hard with the administration and our council to figure out how we can make sure that we're meeting that emergency need while we also bring on those longer term, more permanent solutions to help meet that need and the crisis that we have right now.
Thank you, Jamie. Ken, do you want to answer your question? Unmute yourself and answer your question. Ask your question.
Just we live like 2 blocks away from the Freedom House, and we're very excited about the about the facility, but I would like to know, are there similar facilities in other cities? And have there been any problems with them?
Hi, this is Cheryl. I'm from Listening House. So there is another facility like Freedom House in St. Paul called Listening House that offers daytime services. Across the country, there are other places that are similar to Listening House that are a day respite. But I would also say there are communities that need a service like Listening House or Freedom House where those services do not exist.
And Cheryl, there was a question about
Ken, did that answer your question?
hours of operation. Cheryl, did you want to mention what Listening House's hours of operation are and what the plan is for Freedom House?
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, presently Listening House is only open from 9 until 4, and we are open Monday through Friday. At the Freedom House location, we plan to be open 7 days a week from 8 until 8. Again, with COVID and the recognition that there are fewer places available for people to get in out of the elements during the day, we really felt that weekend hours were essential at a new site.
We also have a question from Catherine. Do you want to ask your question? It was a bit related to hours.
Yes, it was hours, and is it 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.?
7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And where do they go when the facility closes? Great question. Sorry, I hadn't brought up my chat before. When the facility closes, part of the reason we're staying open until 8 is because there is a place called Safe Space, which is an overnight emergency shelter, and that doesn't open until 10, but they will start letting people in earlier than that. So it gives people time to get themselves from Freedom House over to Safe Space.
Where is that located?
That is located downtown St. Paul on Kellogg in the Ramsey County building. You might know it as the Red Brick Building in the former detox space.
And real quick too, how many people does the Freedom House hold?
So it'll be interesting to see how many people the Freedom House holds because it's brand new and we haven't been in there. Because the space is larger than the space we have available at Listening House, where at any one given time, we feel like we can serve 25 to 30 people. I feel like we would be able to double that in the Freedom House space. It's quite a bit bigger.
Thank you. And Elise, does that answer your question about the maximum capacity?
This is Catherine, and yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, and Elise agrees as well.
Yeah.
Deborah, do you want to answer your question or ask your question?
I'll just unmute. Yeah, I'm just wondering if any transport will be provided from the Freedom House to the downtown shelter, and if not, is that a funding situation, and how can we fund it?
I will say that Listening House is not planning on providing that transportation at this time, and I'll turn the rest of that question over to the City of St. Paul.
Thanks for that question. Throughout the summer, this has been transportation has been an issue that we've been working with residents experiencing homelessness, just as they are trying to travel to doctor's appointments and move around to take care of needs and other things. And so it's a space where we have CARES dollars that we've used. We've had city staff that have stepped in and filled some of the need for transportation. also looking at public transportation and making sure that people have access to those resources. But it will be a space where we'll partner with Cheryl, and if we're seeing that there's a need and that it would be helpful, it's certainly something that we would look to try to add.
Thank you. I see that Kat has her hand up. Kat, do you want to ask your question?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Hi. I think what you're doing is great. I do have a couple questions, though. I don't know if the police officer is still around. I live right across the street from Freedom House, and I'm just wondering if you are going to have a place for people to gather and smoke outside. Over there, you don't have any outside benches, but we have a small courtyard in front of our building that does have a ledge that people could sit on and stuff. So I don't know if people are going to come over to our place or.
So I think Senior Commander Ellison is on, and he certainly could take questions. I'm wondering if maybe that's something, Kat, that as we work with Listening House and Cheryl, some of those things are certainly things that, to Councilmember Naker's point, we can have continued conversations and make sure that we're being thoughtful as we roll out the operations and figure out some of those details and what would work best.
Okay.
And Kat, it is actually something that we've thought about because we know that a lot of people do smoke. And I think when your life is really stressful, that's something that can help calm you. Originally, when we looked at the place, part of what we thought about was having a smoking section out back. However, we realized that that's not going to work. So I will imagine that there will be people who periodically will be smoking somewhere outside the building.
Okay.
Was that all your questions, Kat, or did you have another question?
Well, I was just wondering if people are going to, I just imagine that people are going to come across the street because we already have people, that walk around in our area. So, I welcome it. I just hope that, we're going to be fine. We'll all get along.
I want to give the people on the phone, there's several people who are attending who can't see the chat. If you're on the phone and you have a clarifying question, please unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. Oh.
Just a reminder, it's *6 on your phone pad to mute or unmute.
Okay.
Hi there. I do have a couple questions. When the folks that are at the Freedom House are leaving and on their way home back to, hopefully they'll be heading to the safe space. I guess my concerns are in the neighborhood, around the businesses and the private homes, the amount of trash, the panhandling, and the lack of restrooms that will be available people from 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
Dana, I'll start. This is Jamie, and then certainly others from my team could weigh in. In terms of the garbage and trash, there's a couple of things that the city that is an issue, and that the more that we can stay on top of that, it helps all of us meet this need a lot easier. So our park staff and our public works staff, we actually have an additional crew that we funded through the CARES dollars that we got in response to COVID. We kept on an entire additional crew so that we could work to meet that need across the city with, just the additional trash pickups that are needed, making sure that there are additional trash receptacles that are available. You mentioned, yes, volunteer efforts. So we have a team that is doing with our Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. We have AmeriCorps Vistas that are dedicated to the unsheltered work, and they're helping us coordinate volunteers who are interested in helping in this space and can help with going to individual locations and collecting garbage. For the downtown, we also brought back with the CARES dollars the pilot program that in partnership with the Downtown Alliance that had community ambassadors. They're the folks that you all have probably seen in the yellow vests, and they have the garbage carts with them. That was an effort to try to meet a couple of needs. One, to have more activation in the downtown because we have less individuals that are walking around, and so it adds some more people in the space, but they also are helping us with the monitoring and collecting of garbage and other things that we just know are sort of a byproduct of this. So, and then I hope that answered the question, and then certainly others on our team, if I left anything out, that would be helpful.
Yes, the use of bathroom facilities,
Yep.
break-ins to cars, bathroom usage.
Yep.
Yeah.
We have been adding additional porta potties, and due to COVID concerns, we also were adding hand washing stations to certain locations. One of the things that we tried not to do was sort of with the encampments, those decisions became a little complicated because where we didn't want to encourage an encampment to continue, we didn't want to put facilities there as we were trying to encourage individuals to locate in a different spot. But we certainly have access, and if the porta potties for this location are an issue, we certainly can stay in communication around that. Senior Commander Ellison, I don't know if you want to speak to, from SPPD's perspective, sort of some of the things, your approach and how you would be thinking about public safety in this area.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Obviously the St. Paul Police Department, our mission is to protect the peace and maintain public safety. We've had a good opportunity to work on a lot of these issues in downtown over the course of this year. And our officers have really focused on separating out the fact that, being homeless does not, we don't want to criminalize being homeless. So we've really focused on paying attention to the criminal acts that are happening. In fact, we've a lot of the times we were seeing people coming into this environment and taking advantage of those who are homeless. And those are the people that we really want to focus on and take care of the criminal behavior. So the fact that the Freedom House is coming into the space shouldn't, alarm the neighborhood to think that crime is going to immediately go up in the neighborhood. In fact, one of the things we looked at was the grid, the police grid around the listening house over on the east side, and we looked at the year before, the year of, and the year after they were open, and we did not see a marketable increase in crime over there. So obviously we can't predict the future, but looking at the data, there's nothing that really stands out as being a huge concern from our perspective. And again, I think the approach that the St. Paul Police Department takes is really one of support, and we will be obviously monitoring the situation, working closely with the community, as well as the staff at the listening house and the Freedom House, and making sure that we're being responsive to any concerns that do pop up. But our goal from the police perspective really is to make sure that we get the services to those who are in need, and definitely not trying to criminalize those who are homeless.
Thank you, Commander Ellison. I see that Ruth has had her hand up very patiently for quite a while. Ruth, do you want to ask your question? Ruth, are you still here? Okay, well, Ruth, if you're here, type it in the chat and we'll hopefully get back to you. Deborah, did that answer your question about the garbage? I think you and Catherine had similar questions.
Yes, similar questions. I think it's something that I've noticed all around Dorothy Day and the Listening House and throughout the community, that we can be a situation where we can either ask the homeless residents to pick up after themselves or bring volunteers in. But I think it's a critical paid position, and requesting funding to be sure that this is an every hour of every day, it's sort of taking care of people who on some levels can't take care of themselves. And it can, I mean, there are many of us who are completely understanding and are willing to help out or pick up the garbage, but it can also be a situation where community members say, no, forget it. You can't be in our neighborhood. So I think we need to pay very close attention to that, because it seems like a small way to keep it from being a make or break situation.
Thank you, Catherine. Did anyone from the city or county want to add anything or respond to that, or we should go on to the next question?
Dana, I'll just add that, you know, as we have these conversations and as this plays out, I think it'd be really important that we get good feedback, and we're going to be out making our observations. Certainly DSI will be out checking in with Cheryl and with Freedom House. We have considered a variety of different programs to provide some purpose for some individuals. As you had suggested, you know, some of the folks that are experiencing homelessness might benefit by having a regular set of responsibilities, and, you know, providing them some incentive, whether that's, there's been some restaurant folks who've reached out and said, hey, look, we would like to partner with the city. Is there any way that, you know, we would be happy to kind of coordinate a system that supports restaurants as well as, you know, getting some work done in and around like the encampments. In this case, you know, we would be open to those kind of creative, innovative ideas to keep the neighborhood clean, as well as providing some purpose and, you know, supporting other businesses in the area. So I think we're open to that.
Thank you, Ricardo. Brittany, she had a question a while back now. Do you want to ask your question?
I believe it was answered, but I was curious, kind of the long-term viability of it. There was mention of federal funding and COVID dollar funding, and someone answered it's projected for 18 months and then maybe reassessed. But I did have I guess a follow-up question for Rebecca, and I was curious what ongoing check-ins or staying in touch would look like. Is there going to be just a tentative meeting scheduled, or is it going to be as needed as people reach out to their city council or people involved in this project? Or
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. I really appreciate the question and the accountability. You know, I would probably suggest starting with something like every 3 weeks or so scheduled Teams meeting. Commander Ellison mentioned the work downtown that he and his team have been doing, and he and I worked closely together. We scheduled every 3 weeks lower town sort of quality of life check-in calls, and I think those worked really, really well. Actually, being able to do them online somehow makes them, I think, more accessible. You don't have to find a bigger space depending on how many people sign up. You can have as many people as want to come. So that would probably be how I would propose starting, but I'm really open to your feedback as well, and to the West 7th Ward Road Federation's input. I would love to co-host these check-ins with them. And, you know, I agree with what's been said so far. I think it's especially important at the very beginning, kind of as Deborah was saying, we need to get off to a good start, and we need to show that this facility is a good neighbor too. And so especially important at the very, very beginning, I think.
Charles Avenue had asked, is it possible to open Listening House to scheduled visitors from West 7th to quell some of the apprehensions? and so Cheryl put her email in the chat and said she'd be potentially open to that. Ken, do you want to ask your question? Ken? Okay, is he unmuting himself? Okay, well, he's concerned about the 2-hour break between Freedom House clothing at 8 and the safe space opening at 10. Can this gap be closed? Does anyone want to address the gap?
Dana, it looks like some of these questions have been answered just via the
I know,
chat.
but not everyone has view of the chat.
Oh, sure. So
And
Jamie
so,
had answered.
yeah.
Just
so not
really
everyone
quick-
can chat.
Yep, I can. So I think what we've been doing throughout COVID, I mean, there are any number of gaps in the system of support services to meet these needs that we are identifying and working to address. And so, yes, this gap around the time between when Safe Space, the emergency overnight shelter opens, absolutely a gap. You know, any of the other gaps that we address, and I know that Ken mentioned in the chat, you know, in terms of transportation, what about free bus passes? We have contacted the Met Council. I know that they have a program that their bus passes for $1. So there are certainly things that we are looking to see, you know, what are all of the ways that we can step in, meet those needs, address those gaps, because ultimately, I know I share this with all the folks that are on this call. All of our goal is, you know, how do we move folks onto a path of success and solutions. So totally open to those conversations, and certainly as there are suggestions with the follow-up conversations that Councilmember Naker is going to host, we are all ears for good ideas.
Thank you. I was going to say if anyone on the phone who couldn't access the chat wanted to ask a question, and remember to *6 to unmute yourself. Oh, there's someone there.
There was a comment in the chat, and I can just maybe address it a little bit. So Charles Ave said, people who choose to head to Safe Space stand in line, and those individuals would not have time to hang around. One of the things with Safe Space is there's an intake process into that space, and so when folks come in, they line up. There's a referral to get into Safe Space, and then the process is they have belongings, and so Safe Space needs to make sure that anything that would be dangerous, lighters, things like that, they have a locker, and they put those in that space, and then folks are security does sort of a scan. So Safe Space, some of these operations, it's just helpful to some of the gaps or some of the things that feel like a barrier or a challenge. There's reasons that those exist, and so all of those we're trying to address those. But obviously, when the weather gets colder, we want to work with Safe Space, and if there are some solutions for folks standing in line and things like that, we want to see if we can address those needs as well.
Thank you. I saw that Ruth had her hand up again. Ruth, do you want to try again? Ruth? And I think we have someone trying to get in on the phone, but we're having a really hard time hearing you. Okay. Let's see here. And okay, Ruth, are you there again? Josh asks whether the PowerPoint will be available to view after the meeting. And so Suzanne says she's going to provide the PowerPoint to and post it on the city's website as well.
Click it. Well, you don't want to click on it again, but that's what I clicked on.
What? Ruth.
I was gonna say that's Burke. Is Ruth talking?
I think
recognize
her
the voice.
little thing lit up like she was going to talk.
This is a bad interface.
Ruth, we can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yes, please
Okay.
ask your question.
The microphone is still has a line through it, so I don't know how this thing works. But so I'm sure this has been addressed. So what is the number to call when there is a problem? I mean, I'm a little concerned about Irvine Park being as close to this. And we've had people sleeping in the gazebo. We've had people relieving themselves on the gazebo. So is there a number to call to get some action from this Freedom House?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Cheryl, I'll let you respond if there's a number for or a process that you have, but everybody can always call 911. And Senior Commander Ellison is on the phone. I know that he could speak to his officers, particularly in our downtown. I mean, they are very experienced and thoughtful. They all of those quality of life issues, they are there to respond to those. And we want to make sure that we're working with Freedom House and some of our other partners. And, if there are better and additional resources to respond to to any of the issues that might pop up, we're certainly open to that. But
well, we don't
thank
want
you for asking that. And I know that those are concerns and that there's anxiety. And please hear me when I say we want this to be a good, positive experience. And so I appreciate you bringing that up. And
Okay. Any follow-up questions, Ruth?
One of the points, this is Cheryl from Listening House. I think one of the points I would like to add is that actually sometimes when you have a space that people can come into where they can use the bathroom and they can kind of rest and relax, it mitigates the number of people who you will find just kind of milling about, hanging around, that kind of thing, because now they actually have some place to be. Oftentimes people have to be someplace. So when they haven't had any place to be, then they'll just go where they can.
Okay. Okay, Deborah's had her hand up for a while. Deborah, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I have just a couple quick ones. Someone, I think, said that the residents in the residency program at UFM would work with the guests. My understanding is that those residents are no longer there because of what has happened. I mean, United Family Medicine has kind of met its demise in this community. Can you respond to that, or am I confused, or what?
This is Cheryl. There might be somebody else on the call, but I did have a brief conversation with Dr. Rumsey earlier today where he had asked if it would be possible for the residents to come over. So I can't speak to the rest of United Family Medicine. I can only say that he did put the call out, and we said, we think that sounds like a great idea. Let's partner with Healthcare for the Homeless to figure out how to make that happen.
Okay.
Had
One more question? Go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, about the 911 calling. Any information you can provide to the community that would allow them to avoid calling 911 and contact someone who we can feel very confident isn't treating something as an emergency situation if it's just an annoyance or a difficulty with someone with mental illness or addiction, please give us that. Because we see in our neighborhood very regularly confusion about whether or not it's an emergency. And it puts the residents at risk, and it puts the homeless person at risk.
Agreed. Ricardo, we have a number of resources, and I know that Ramsey County Crisis Response, so we can definitely get some numbers put together, and we can make sure that we're getting that information out. Ricardo or Jeremy, I don't know if you want to speak to this. I will also say that our Coast unit in SPPD, they have an embedded social worker. This is the work that they do. They are police officers, but they are focused on responding to mental health and issues where people are in crisis. So, and again, if anyone ever feels unsafe, it's important to call 911. And it's our responsibility that, and I have every confidence that our SPPD, they're going to show up and de-escalate, and I've seen them do that, and so I needed to say that, but we do have other numbers, certainly crisis response and others, and we'll make sure that we get that we get all of that information out.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add too is it's important for people to realize that when you call 911 or you call the non-emergency number, that the dispatchers will take your information and they'll decide what the best response is. So there's times when people call 911, they describe the situation, and then the dispatcher decides that, hey, Ramsey County Crisis would actually be a better response to this than the police. Or like Deputy Mayor described, our Coast unit, if they're available, they can come out and handle that. It's not always just when you call 911, you're not always going to just get a police response. They really do evaluate the situation. So that's why when you call, it's really important to give them all the information and describe what you're seeing, and give an opinion about what you think may be the best response. That may not necessarily be exactly the response that happens, but feel free to let them know what you're seeing and what you're thinking.
Okay. Yeah, we had a few more people asking about alternatives to calling the police or calling 911. And that was the last of the current questions in the chat. Is there anyone on the phone who has a question?
Yes, actually, we do have an unanswered question in the chat.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's under Catherine, but actually my name is Elise, not Jensen Steiner. I also live on Irvine Park. And 2 points. I just wanted to reiterate what both Ruth and Dirk had to say about what we are currently experiencing with life around the park. He mentioned the gazebo, and it's not just limited to within Irvine Park itself. It's on the Chestnut, going down to the river. And I personally, from my experiences in this last year, have seen a tremendous, and even before COVID, a tremendous increase of issues. I will not say they weren't, and I never have called 911 based on people defecating or going through the dumpsters, leaving trash all over the place, coming into our garages, and actually sleeping in cars if left unlocked in our private parking lots. So I don't think those are worth a 911 call. We recognize that the police have a lot bigger, more important issues to deal with. But I just did want to point out that it is an issue now, and it is getting worse week by week by week. We have more people coming into our garages if you leave them open for 5 minutes, walking out with bicycles, when you just leave your garage open to carry your groceries upstairs. And so that's just one thing I wanted to point out. And the other unanswered question in the chat was, I'm sorry if we missed it. We were wondering what the exact proposed opening day is for Freedom House. And then to that point, is there or where is there an exact project plan or something to that nature? You talked about having extra porta potties. You talk about having trash receptacles, et cetera. But where is the plan that shows where exactly they're going to be located, how many of them there are, and when exactly will you know how many people the facility can handle? I think I heard one of you say earlier that you don't know because you haven't been in there yet. So I guess I'm just looking for, a little bit more clarification on how do you solve a problem if you can't identify the specifics of what maybe the issues are going to be.
Thank you, Catherine.
So Catherine, I'll start with the first part, and I'm sorry for the break-ins and the challenges, and I will say that we're hearing that in other locations across the city, and all I can say is that we're working really, really hard to figure out what are the options, how can we meet this need, and give folks some options to be indoors, and honestly, I think that's what we have to do so that we can alleviate those challenges and those frustrations and what you're experiencing. And we've been successful in some other locations where we focused and worked really hard to address those. In terms of porta potties and garbage receptacles, one of the reasons that I'm not sure, because for this location, the porta potties and other things have been a real need for encampment management, where we have tents and things like that. For this location, the goal is to actually have everyone indoors, warm and being connected to services and things like that. So the reason that we don't have a specific answer on whether or not we need porta potties and additional trash receptacles is our goal is to not have a need for that. Ricardo, you could speak to some of the details on the plan moving forward. There are contractual lease agreements, the city council actions that need to happen, some of the technical things that we need to move forward. But operationally, our goal was to get additional services and capacity available by November 1st. And as with anything, we're working as hard as we can to do it as fast as we can, but to hire staff and get everything operational, it's as soon as possible. And I think we have a goal date. Ricardo, you or Cheryl can refresh my memory on what our goal opening date is.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So we're looking at December 1st or thereabouts in order to activate this location. And in regards to the various plans, we have plans that we call operational site plans that are really specific to different areas, mostly around the encampments. But as we activate this space, I think, again, some of the responses will be iterative. We'll have to listen to see what the issues are and then put resources towards that. I think it's important also to note that this group within the city, which really includes all or nearly all of our departments, meets twice a week to review how the operations are occurring throughout the city, both at our encampments, along with some of our service providers, as well as our outreach individuals, to take in all of that information so that we can make decisions about where the resources are needed throughout the city. And so we'll be doing that in this case. In regards to the actual number of individuals that will be served at any one specific time, I think some of the concerns, and I'll just be real transparent, is the traffic, the number of individuals, right? So I think part of the equation is how many people can be there at once. The idea is really to get them out of Irvine Park, to get them out of the gazebo, to get them off of the street, and provide a location that's safe, healthy, and they can find rest, and they can find the basic needs that the services will provide. So our goal is really to get individuals off the street, out of the parks, and into this facility for a period of time. And then it's the number of individuals that are served throughout the day. The idea is that individuals have different needs. We identified some of the gaps in regards to, whether they're staying at safe space. Not all of the individuals that come to Freedom House will be staying at safe space. Some may be staying overnight at higher ground. And so we need to address those gaps as best we can. But then also, the plan around, how many receptacles. I think that'll be driven by what we're seeing in regards to trash in and around the area. Porta potties, again, we have outfitted about 10 different areas, 10 different encampments throughout the city with either hand washing stations, which are now becoming a challenge because of the weather, and porta potties, right? I would really be careful about putting porta potties in a location that we don't want, large numbers of individuals to go to, right? Is to make it convenient. So I'm hopeful that the report will be, we have less individuals defecating in the park, less individuals urinating in the park. And that, and there's reminders, certainly as people are leaving to go to whether it's going to be an encampment, a tent, or a shelter, is to relieve themselves in advance, right? And those are just some of the basic things that they're being provided at Freedom House.
Okay, I see that Deborah has her hand up. Do you want to ask your question, Deborah?
Yes, I'm wondering how you'll handle overload. Larger amounts of people wanting to have the day programs than you have space available for.
Deborah, thanks for your question. There is both Listening House and Freedom House, and we haven't yet at Listening House had to turn people away. Among the community members who experience homelessness, there's a lot of compassion for one another. So while we at one point used to really pack people in our space is intentionally set up so that social distancing is very obvious. We do a screening at the door. We talk about the need to remain social distanced. And what we've seen thus far at Listening House is that when we seem to be nearing capacity at any one time, a guest who has been there longer will just say, you know what, I'm going to go. I've been here for a couple hours. I'm going to let someone else come in, because people are actually really kind and caring toward their fellow humans, because they know that there's going to be a time that they want somebody to kind of do the same for them. So, hopefully we won't hit that point, but what we've seen so far is just a lot of compassion by people experiencing homelessness towards others experiencing homelessness.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Catherine?
Keep calling me Catherine and I'm Deborah, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
It does. Thanks, Dana.
Dana,
Okay, great.
I have just one more tidbit of information.
Sure.
So in working with Ramsey County, we recognize that we're really hard pressed to provide locations for individuals to go. And so we're in the process of engaging Higher Ground again and asking them if they can't extend and provide more hours of day space so that, one, they can help shorten that gap, but then also add some additional capacity to the entire system. So that's underway as well.
Thank you, Ricardo. Catherine was asking about transportation to safe space, and I think we've discussed that already, where looks like it's relying on Metro Transit and possibly hooking people up to their dollar a ride program. I also want to note that downtown buses are already 50 cents in the downtown zone, and Freedom House is in the downtown zone. But anyways, I think Josh has a question, and then we're nearing, it's 6:20. So I want to get the last few, couple questions, but then give person Naker and others a chance to have any last word or things they want to say, or that more information maybe about the continuing conversation that we'll be having. So Josh, do you want to answer your question, and then we can maybe take one more if there's any. Josh? Well, Josh asked if there's any programming that allows humans and their companion animals to remain together.
So this is Charlotte at Listening House. We had been, prior to COVID, allowing people to bring their companion animals into Listening House. because that space is relatively small. Post-COVID, we've kind of been bringing needed animal items to the door. We do have dog food and water dishes that we've been bringing out. It is our hope in the new space that we will have enough capacity to let those who have companion animals bring them in with them. There is always the issue that some people are very uncomfortable around animals, whether they're, you know, a companion animal, a service animal, or whatever. So we try to also respect the rights of the human in the space to be comfortable, because we've seen a lot of fear that way. But we're hopeful that they can come to Freedom House. And I cannot speak to the overnight space because I know that's a problem.
And Josh, I would say,
Catherine asked if the next meetings will be open to the public.
I was just going to mention to Josh that among many other barriers for shelter and services that are offered, we've heard a lot that the companion animals and being able to keep your animals, that's a barrier and a challenge. And we're having those conversations with service providers to see what options, you know, how could we overcome that barrier? There's a number of others, you know, couples who are experiencing homelessness. You know, how do we address that barrier and challenge among many others? So again, I think staying in contact and just continuing these conversations, you know, we're happy to continue with good ideas to meet those needs.
Well, with that, I think we've kind of come to the end of our time tonight, but I can say that for the Fort Road Federation, we're grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation, and we're looking forward to, as this goes forward, continuing these conversations. As I said in the beginning, we want this project to work for all neighbors. And so we look forward to having that continuing conversation, and should problems arise, how can we be part of that solution? But I will turn it over to the city and others to take us out. But I just want to say thank you, everybody, for this conversation tonight.
Well, I will just jump in and once again, thank you, Dana. You masterfully led this conversation, and I really appreciate it. And thank you to the Fort Road Federation for leading. And to everyone on the call, I just want to thank you so much for the genuinely compassionate tone in which we had this conversation tonight. I think it means the world and says so much about our community and our neighborhood. And so I really want to tell you how grateful I am and how much I admire the way that we've had this conversation tonight. I took notes on many of the concerns that you raised. A couple of the things I heard, just to reflect back to you, some concerns about transportation between Freedom House and the safe space, concerns about trash and porta potties and sort of general quality of life issues around Freedom House, and then that gap between 8 and 10 p.m. So those were some of the things I heard, and we talked about others too, but I noted those down because they came up a number of times, and those will be things that I'll be working on with city staff after this call. If you heard there's some uncertainty about some things tonight, that's because we are truly being nimble and flexible and responding as quickly as we can to an emergency situation. And I will tell you, I have seen our staff over the course of this pandemic where every day has brought a totally unexpected crisis or situation. They are able to respond quickly. So if we don't know now how many trash cans we need, that's because we want to be able in a moment's notice to add more rather than to have a rigid plan now that we're going to stick to and not be able to change. So we will be able to be responsive, and I look forward to reaching out and scheduling those conversations. As soon as we actually have Freedom House open, I'll reach out to Fort Road and we'll get those scheduled. So thank you again so much.
Thank you, everyone.